You're driving tens of thousands of miles a year. You drive for a living. On Friday, we highlighted the fact that obviously petrol prices are going up, diesel prices are going up. They're up 25% at least over the last year. But it seems that motorway service stations are turning the screw even more.
Harder.
You've noticed that?
Yeah, I mean, I used to fill the car up and you could put 80, 90 pound in on a full. Now you're looking at 120, 130.
Because you drive big cars, executive prestige cars. Even a regular 55-litre family saloon, it's over 90 quid on the motorway, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, why do you think the motorways are charging so much more than a local, I mean, sometimes 10% more than a local petrol station?
I think it's a captive audience. When you pull off the motorway, you go into the service, you haven't got a load of petrol garages around you. You might have to do another 30, 40 miles up the motorway before you get next service station. So they've got you, you know, best to fill up before you get on the motorway.
Exactly. And you've been driving for many, many years. Is the squeeze on motorists, is it the worst you've ever felt?
Yes, it's tight. It's getting harder and harder. You know, not only for chauffeurs, for taxis, the fuel prices. Yeah. You know, I think you go back only a few weeks ago, shortage of lorry drivers, they simply replaced that. Couldn't get the fuel to the garages. The prices went up. I don't think they come down.
We're going to ask you about electric cars in a moment, because I know you're under pressure to buy an electric car. They're obviously massively expensive and not so good on the second-hand market, according to people I've spoken to. Let's just turn to Stephen Griggs. Stephen, great to have you on the show. We're so glad you're a fan of On the Money. Tell us about your household fuel bills, how they've gone up over the last 12 months or so, and how you're viewing the prospect of the fact that with this Ofgem energy price cap being lifted, that taking effect in April, we're looking at 50-odd% increases in household energy bills across the board from where they already are.
Well, I was quite pleased last week because my energy company wrote to me and said my monthly direct debit will be going down, not up. So, but then I got bad news over the weekend. They're now telling me it's going to double.
Wow. So you've got a nice thick shirt on there, Stephen, and you've got a decent pullover on. What steps are you taking, and what advice can you give to fellow On the Money viewers about how you try and keep your energy bills, I know they concern you, as low as they can possibly be?
Well, I have to say it's a little bit easier for me because I live on my own, so I can, it's easier for me to make changes. But basically, it's no great hardship to just heat the room that you happen to be in at the time. Don't heat the whole house to 22 degrees or whatever. I generally have my house at about 18 degrees, which is, more than comfortable. And I just heat the room that I'm in at the time. And when I come out of that room, I turn the radiator down and, turn the next one up wherever I happen to be.
And what do you think of the package of measures that the Chancellor introduced or announced? Some of the policies won't come in for a while. So we're looking at a £150 council tax rebate if you're in a house band A to D. I imagine in London, your house isn't in that relatively low-valued category. Also, you're going to be lent money, it seems, by your electricity company effectively to keep your bills down, and you're going to pay that money off over the next 5 years. Do you think the Chancellor's done enough? Do you think he'll have to do more?
Well, it'd be nice, wouldn't it? I mean, I don't know how a lot of families are going to cope, to be honest. Having their fuel, prices double overnight. I mean, that's a huge burden.
I think Stephen Grigg is right, isn't he, Helen? Come April, it is going to be a shock. We talk about it pretty much every day, Monday to Friday, here on The Money. But even among journalist colleagues and friends of mine who are generally sort of pretty financially literate people, there's not a kind of understanding that this 54% increase in fuel bills, that's an average. So if you're a family heating a family home, often you're going to use more than the average because, of course, quite a few people live alone. Do you think the government's going to have to do more to help particularly low-income and vulnerable households, not least across that red wall where they have to win those seats to maintain their parliamentary majority?
Well, this is what they're going to have to look at. You're right, it will come as a shock. We get very buried in this minutiae and it obsesses us. But it is a real-world impact on everybody. And goodness me, we've had enough to worry about these last couple of years. So I can imagine, even if people know about it, they don't want to think about it. And what can they do? An awful lot of households in Britain can't save. They just don't have the resources. So, you know, what's the point in worrying until you get there? But I think there's a bigger point we often discuss here on government priorities. We've seen the government can splash the cash. We know, apparently, an argument...
COVID support loans, many of which aren't being repaid, it turns out.
Apparently, and we know there's an argument even happening today that's delayed the Cabinet meeting because of this argument between the Treasury and the Health Departments. The Treasury's got everybody demanding something. And, you know, governments have to prioritise. Having said that, you know, making sure you can, you know, get fed, travel, and don't just travel, I mean get around, as we're hearing from car costs here, and be comfortable enough, warm enough, is you'd think some of the basic priorities of a government. We will find out.
I think ahead of these May elections, we've talked about this off air, I'm going to say it on air, I think ahead of these May elections, which are really crucial for Boris Johnson's leadership, I think that's objectively true, I think we're going to see some U-turns from government. I think they're going to temper that rise in national insurance coming in April and maybe do more on the energy front. But we will see. Dean, let me turn to you now. You're a self-employed guy. You're an entrepreneurial guy. What would you say if the government brought in what Labour's calling for, which is a windfall tax on those oil and gas companies making huge amounts of money, not the electricity providers, because they're often squeezed between high wholesale costs and people not being able to pay. But I'm talking about the big oil and gas giants, the global companies. They're making a lot of money. They're charging $1.66 on average on a motorway service station, which is 10% more than they're charging everywhere else. Labour want a windfall tax on those companies, taxing their profits, one-off. What do you think of that?
It's difficult. It would be nice. It would be very nice if they could do it. But somewhere along the line, you're going to pay for it, wherever they give you these subsidised, whatever, you're paying it back. And so somewhere along the line, we are going to be paying for this. I just find it very messy.
And tell me about the pressure you're under as a private chauffeur, the kind of car industry in general, the driver industry, to move to an electric car. You obviously look at the prices of these cars. What do you think? Is this something you could do in the near future, or is it just prohibitive, the cost?
No, we're looking at to change the cars shortly. But one of the problems is the mileage that we do, and these cars are only doing 30 miles approximately, unless you go to the full electric, like a Tesla or something like that.
And they have tens of thousands of pounds.
BMW, Mercedes, Audis, you're getting 30 miles.
The hybrids.
Yeah, plug-in hybrid. You're getting 30 miles, which isn't going to do a great deal when you're doing the mileage that we do.
I think I'm right in saying at the moment the range on smaller family cars is bigger, but you're driving, bigger executive cars,
limousine car,
3, 4, 5 people in them. Yeah. The range is much less.
30 miles.
And presumably, when you try and sell those cars on second hand, electric cars, they don't hold their value, do they? Because the battery.
Well, one, because of the batteries, the battery depreciates. They're very heavy in a vehicle. And I don't know where these batteries are all going to end up in some kind of landfill somewhere or other. But it's just not enough return to go fully electric. The cost of the fully electric as against the hybrid, but the hybrid's only 30 miles. It might give me a local mileage to do your shopping or get you into work.
But not between big cities.
But the job itself, when you're driving the executives around, you're on fuel.